When TB12, the literal quarterback deity of the NFL, calls out your organization for failing a young QB before he even had a chance to fail on his own, that's not just criticism. That's a public execution. And it wasn't just Brady. One by one, the takes started rolling in. Stephen A. Smith, Lewis, Riddick, ex-players, analysts, even fans who try to give the Browns a benefit of the doubt, all of them pointing the finger back at the same problem. This wasn't about Shedeur Sanders flopping. This was about the Browns setting him up to fail. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. But let's rewind a bit, because the dysfunction didn't come out of nowhere. And if you're thinking, wait, the Browns drafted Shedeur Sanders? Yes, they did. Not with fanfare. Not with a clear development plan. Just quietly, like they were picking up a backup tight end. Not Deion Sanders' son. Not a Heisman contender. Not a guy who could have been the face of the franchise if they treated him like one. From the start, the vibes were off. Shedeur gets picked in the later rounds. No big flashy intro, no real PR push. He didn't even get a proper welcome interview from upper management. Jimmy Haslam, the team's owner, literally admitted he didn't even know who signed Shedeur. Excuse me? You own the team. You don't know who signed the quarterback? That should have been the first red flag. But of course, in typical Browns fashion, they just kept piling on. No structured development. No mentorship. Just vibes. And vibes do not win football games. Tom Brady, who's been mentoring young QBs since retirement like he's assembling the Avengers, said it best. We judge these young quarterbacks, but we never ask who's coaching them, who's guiding them. And when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, the answer was no one. There wasn't a single consistent voice in that locker room backing him. Coaches were all over the place. One day he's QB2. The next day, they're trialing someone else. One coordinator says he's still evaluating him. Another straight up doesn't mention him at all. And you're supposed to grow in that? Let's talk about reps for a second. Because if you've ever played a sport, you know how important it is to actually get on the field. Practice reps, preseason snaps. Even just being allowed to mess up without fear of vanishing from the depth chart. Shedeur got none of that. Thrown into a starting role during camp with barely any preparation, then yanked when things didn't go perfectly. What did they expect? You know what this smells like? It smells like a team that wanted a PR boost from drafting Deion's kid, but never believed in developing him. They used the Sanders name as clout, not as commitment. That's not just disrespectful. It's sabotage dressed up in a jersey. Lewis Riddick, who's been inside these organizations and knows how the sausage gets made, was fuming. He said Sanders didn't have a single advocate in the building. No one fighting for him. No one protecting his reps. No one championing his potential. You can't succeed in the NFL like that unless you're an alien sent from another planet. And even then, good luck without a decent O-line. It's easy to look at young QBs and say, he's not ready. He's not good enough. But who's asking? Did we actually prepare him? Did we give him the coaching and structure and consistency he needed? In Sanders' case, the answer is a hard no. He was left to sink or swim in a pool filled with sharks, and they tossed him in wearing floaties. Brady's comment hit like a thunderclap because it shined a light on something fans feel all the time but rarely hear confirmed from the inside. Coaches are never held accountable the same way players are. A player throws one bad pass, and he's trending on Twitter with #bust. A coach mismanages an entire season? Crickets. Maybe a shrug, and a press conference full of cliches. In Cleveland, that disparity was on full display. The front office acted like they were just rolling dice and hoping for the best. No vision, no long-term plan. And when things started to go sideways, they quietly let Sanders take the fall instead of owning the mess they created. And don't get it twisted. This isn't about defending Sanders just because of who his dad is. It's about treating any young quarterback with the same care and investment you'd give to a first-rounder. Because otherwise, what's the point? Why draft them at all? Stephen A. Smith couldn't hold back, either. He called the situation a classic case of organizational malpractice. Which, honestly, facts. If the Browns wanted to tank Sanders' confidence, waste his rookie year, and make sure no one could really assess his potential, well, mission accomplished. But here's the kicker. This isn't even unique to Cleveland. This is a league-wide problem, and that's what made Brady's comments so explosive. He wasn't just calling out one team. He was calling out a culture, a toxic cycle where young players are disposable unless they come out the gate looking like Mahomes. And guess what? Most of them won't. Most players need time, structure, patience, a plan, not vibes and chaos and ghosting from the GM. If you want a perfect example of how not to develop a quarterback, the Browns' handling of Shedeur Sanders is now Exhibit A. It's giving, we didn't think this through. It's giving, we wanted clicks, not growth. And it's definitely giving, we'll blame the player before we look inward. The fans saw it. NFL vets saw it. And now the world's most decorated QB has said it out loud. This is a system failure, not a player failure. And the Browns? They're scrambling. Because now that the narrative shifted from maybe Sanders isn't ready to maybe Cleveland never gave him a real shot, they're on the defensive. Suddenly coaches are doing damage control interviews. Suddenly we're hearing phrases like reevaluating our developmental protocols. Oh, now you care? Where was all this when Sanders was actually in your building, trying to earn a spot to the fog of mismanagement and mediocrity? And let's not forget Jimmy Haslam, just chilling at the top of all this like it's someone else's problem. You're the owner. It is your problem. If you don't even know who's being signed, who's getting developed, or who's mentoring your rookie QBs, what are you doing? Collecting stadium rent? The way this played out tells you everything you need to know about the internal chaos in Cleveland. And while Sanders might have walked away bruised, the Browns walked away exposed. So here we are, a rising star dragged through mud because the system didn't care enough to give him a ladder. A franchise once again embroiled in controversy. And the rest of the league watching, wondering how many other players are stuck in similar purgatory. The tragedy of this isn't just Shedeur Sanders. It's the dozens of young talents that never even make it to this stage. The ones who disappear into depth charts and off-season cuts because someone upstairs never believed in them in the first place. But the good news? People are finally talking. Brady cracked the door open, and now the light's coming in. Analysts, fans, and former players are all saying the quiet part out loud. We don't just need better players. We need better systems, better accountability, more support, less ego. Because until that happens, we're going to keep seeing this story on repeat. New name, same plot. Promising talent wasted because someone in a polo shirt thought vibes were enough. So congrats, Cleveland. You don't just get a quarterback controversy. You get the "we had one job" award. Honorable mentions to every coach who said he just didn't impress in practice while giving him 5 snaps and 0 context. But hey, at least now the whole world knows. If you're not ready to develop your draft picks, someone like Tom Brady will call you out on national television. And honestly, that might be the most productive pass we've seen all season. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did Cleveland actually want Shedeur to succeed, or was he just another PR move gone wrong? And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button for more drama, more chaos, and more receipts. Because when the NFL fumbles the bag this hard, you know we're not letting it slide. Because here's the part nobody really talks about. Why would a team like the Browns draft Shedeur Sanders at all if they weren't ready to invest in his future? Like, genuinely, what was the strategy here? Let's be real. NFL teams don't just accidentally draft quarterbacks. There are meetings. There are scouting reports. There are whiteboards with phrases like potential franchise cornerstone and long-term development plan. Or at least there should be. But in Cleveland's case, it started to feel like someone just saw the name Sanders, had a flash of Dion coaching energy, and thought, well, this'll get us some headlines. Mission accomplished. Except now the headlines are all bad. Now, instead of being the team that saw value in a gritty, mobile, high IQ quarterback with media appeal and serious upside, you're the team that botched it. Again. And that's the word that keeps popping up in this whole saga. Again. Because this isn't new for the Browns. This isn't even unusual. It's pattern behavior. It's a franchise that, year after year, finds new ways to mismanage young talent like it's a hobby. Quarterback graveyard? That's not just a meme anymore. It's a documentary waiting to happen. Think about it. How many QBs have come through Cleveland over the last 2 decades with high hopes and left with their careers limping? And each time, the blame conveniently lands on the player. He wasn't tough enough. Didn't adjust to the speed. Didn't command the locker room. Always the same script. Never mind that the offensive line was Swiss cheese. Never mind that the play calling was wildly inconsistent. Never mind that the coaching staff couldn't agree on what day it was, let alone how to develop a quarterback. So when Shedeur came in, all bright-eyed, sharp, and polished, armed with NFL bloodlines and a chip the size of Colorado, you'd think someone in the organization would have said, "Let's do this the right way." Give him a mentor. Build a plan. Let him watch and learn. Gradually ease him into the system. Nope. Instead, they dropped him in the deep end mid-chaos and told him to swim. No lifeguard. No floaties. Just vibes and post-practice shrugs. And now that he's out of the building, it's all retroactive sympathy. Oh, we probably should have done more. He's got talent, no doubt about that. Where was all this insight before? Here's where it gets even messier. The Browns didn't just fail Shedeur Sanders. They failed themselves. Because if there's one thing the NFL should have learned by now, it's this. Treating young quarterbacks like disposable test runs never works out. You're not just stunting their growth. You're torpedoing your own chances of long-term success. But organizations like the Browns love to play hot potato with accountability. It's always someone else's job. The owner says he wasn't involved. The GM says the coaches run development. The coaches say it's a team effort. Translation: nobody wants to be held responsible when things go sideways. Which, surprise, they did. And in that vacuum of leadership, players suffer. Not just Shedeur, all the lower round QBs, the fringe talents, the guys who just need a shot and a little structure to shine. These aren't luxury picks. These are investments. And if your organization doesn't have the infrastructure to support them, then you shouldn't be drafting them in the first place. Let's talk about the NFL as a whole, because Brady's not just blowing smoke here. He's seeing what we're all seeing. This league is obsessed with output, but allergic to development. Every team wants the next Mahomes, the next Lamar, the next Burrow. But no one wants to put in years of groundwork that actually make those guys who they are. It's like planting a tree and getting mad it's not a redwood by Tuesday. Brady said it straight up. We evaluate players too fast, and coaches not at all. And that's the most savage part of all this. Because Shedeur's already being talked about like a failed experiment in some circles, while the coaches who mismanage him will move on, get another job, maybe even a promotion. It's not just frustrating. It's insulting to the player, to the fans, to the idea of a functioning, competitive league. And speaking of fans, oh, they're catching on. Browns fans aren't stupid. They've lived through enough heartbreak to recognize when a situation stinks. And this one, it reeks. You can hear it on the forums. See it on Reddit. Fans asking, why do we keep him around? Why not give him a real year of development behind the starter? And the answer is what? Roster flexibility? Veteran preferences? Sorry, that doesn't cut it. Not when you're the Browns. Not when you got nothing locked down long-term at the quarterback position. Instead, you've let go of a guy who might have been something, just because you didn't have the patience to find out. And now, thanks to Tom Brady and a few other very vocal insiders, everyone knows it. And Shedeur, he's not out here trashing the team. He hasn't posted a cryptic IG story. No tell-all tweets. He's just doing what he's always done. Keeping his head down, keeping receipts, and letting the media swirl around without jumping in. But you know it's eating at him. You know he's waiting for that next opportunity to prove what Cleveland never gave him the space to. And when that day comes, oh, it's going to be biblical. Imagine this. Shedeur gets picked up by a team that actually gives a damn. They put him on a clear plan, pair him with a competent QB coach, give him some real reps, and slowly but surely he rises. Not overnight, but steadily, confidently. And the whole time, the camera keeps panning back to that moment in Cleveland, that wasted year, that mishandled shot, and it becomes the ultimate revenge arc. You know how the NFL loves its redemption stories? This one's practically writing itself. Meanwhile, Cleveland's left holding the bag. Again, searching for yet another quarterback, whispering, maybe next year, into the void, pretending like none of this ever happened. But it did happen, and now it's part of the record. So, where do we go from here? Well, ideally, someone at the league level finally takes this conversation seriously. Starts asking the hard questions. Why are so many young QBs failing early? Why aren't coaching staffs evaluated the way players are? Why are owners like Jimmy Haslam allowed to be so hands-off that they don't even know their own draft picks? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a Browns problem. It's a structural problem, a culture problem. And unless something changes, we'll be right back here in 6 months talking about another young talent who never got a fair shot. But for now, the spotlight's on Cleveland. And it's blistering. You fumbled a QB with name recognition, pedigree, poise, and proven talent. You had the chance to rewrite your tired quarterback narrative, and you burned it down before the ink was even dry. All because you couldn't be bothered to do the bare minimum. Build a plan, stick to it, and give the kid a real chance. Because the thing about drama in the NFL is, it never really ends. It just changes jerseys. And when you got a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, who already knows how to carry the weight of expectations, media glare, the pressure of a famous last name, the eyes of skeptics locked in 24/7, you're not just watching a football story unfold. You're watching a slow-burn redemption arc that every sports documentary director is frothing over. But while Shedeur's comeback is still brewing, Cleveland is busy playing defense. And I'm not talking about on the field. You'd think, after being publicly scorched by one of the most respected quarterbacks in NFL history, the Browns front office might take a minute to reflect. Maybe have an internal meeting. Take some accountability. Fix things before the next scandal eats them alive. Nope. Instead, radio silence. Or worse, leaks to the media about inconsistencies in Sanders' work ethic. That old chestnut. Let me ask you something. Why is it always the player who wasn't ready when the system failed them first? Why do we so easily accept this narrative that a 21-year-old kid is supposed to magically be NFL perfect the minute he walks through the door, while the grown adults with six-figure salaries and decades of coaching experience get a pass when things fall apart? Shedeur Sanders didn't need a perfect situation. He didn't even need to start. What he needed, what every rookie needs, was intention, a roadmap, a plan that wasn't just scribbled on a napkin and forgotten by week 2. But Cleveland didn't have that. What they had was chaos, a quarterback room held together by duct tape and denial, and a coaching staff that couldn't even agree on what type of quarterback Sanders was, let alone how to use him. Let's not forget, this is a player who, just 1 year earlier, was the literal heartbeat of the Colorado program. He wasn't just putting up numbers. He was dragging a struggling team into primetime relevance every single week. He took it after hit behind a collapsing offensive line and still managed to shine. And yet, the Browns looked at that, brought him in, and within a few months had turned him into a footnote. A what could have been. You can't make this stuff up. But here's where it gets even uglier. Behind closed doors around the league, people are talking. Because when Tom Brady speaks, people listen. And when Brady says this is a systemic failure, that the NFL is chewing up and spitting out young quarterbacks without even pretending to coach them properly, it shifts the conversation from a team-specific screw-up to a league-wide indictment. Imagine being a young QB right now, watching this whole saga unfold. You start asking yourself, is my draft position a death sentence? Will I land in a franchise that sees me as a project to be developed, or a dart-throwing name? That uncertainty? That lack of trust? That's the real cause of what Cleveland just did. And let's talk about Deion for a second, because Coach Prime saw all this. He's watching like a hawk. This is a man who built a brand on demanding excellence and calling out BS from 100 yards away. Do you really think he's going to let the NFL mishandle his son without saying something down the line? Not yet. Maybe. He's playing it cool for now. But let Shedeur get another shot in a better system. Let him rise. Then you'll see the receipts come out. All of them. And Cleveland, you better hope he never plays you. Because if that day comes, you're not just looking at a football game. You're looking at poetic justice wrapped in a touchdown pass. But while Shedeur prepares his comeback in silence, Cleveland is doubling down on damage control. Anonymous sources, strategic leaks, buzzwords like fit and scheme compatibility, anything to deflect from the truth. They didn't protect him. Not mentally, not physically, not structurally. And even worse, they didn't believe in him. Not really. They believed in the idea of him, the optics, the jersey sales, the excitement. But the moment it came time to roll up their sleeves and actually build something around him, crickets. Now, some folks might say, it's just business. Not every draft pick works out. And yeah, fair. This is the NFL. It's cutthroat. Players get replaced all the time. But this wasn't just a swing and a miss. This was a deliberate failure to prepare a player, followed by a quiet exit and a hope that nobody would notice. Except someone did notice. Multiple someones. And now the questions aren't stopping. What exactly was the plan for Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland? Who vouched for him? Who dropped the ball? Why was he barely getting reps when other rookies across the league were getting first-team looks and mentorship? And here's the thing. You don't need to be a Shedeur fan to find this disturbing, because this story isn't about one player. It's about the future of the league. It's about how franchises treat their young talent when no one's watching. Are they nurturing them or just filing them away until they're convenient? Are they building systems to elevate new talent or blaming them when the system fails? Because if we keep pretending this is normal, then don't be surprised when the next young quarterback flames out before we ever get to see what he could have been. It's not that these guys can't play. It's that the NFL still hasn't figured out how to grow them. And let's be clear, Shedeur Sanders isn't going away. He's not some one-season story. He's not just Deion's kid or a viral moment. He's got the poise, the IQ, the work ethic, and most importantly, the receipts. You don't think he's keeping track of who said what? Who doubted him? Who played politics instead of football? Come on, he's a Sanders. That name doesn't go quietly. So as the Browns spiral into their next quarterback crisis, because let's be honest, it's coming, and as other teams take note of how not to run player development, remember this saga. Remember the silence from ownership, the deflection from coaches, the cold shoulder given to a young man who deserved a chance to learn and grow, not be evaluated like a fantasy league flyer. Because Shedeur's story isn't over. It's just on intermission. And when he walks back onto that field, somewhere with someone who actually has a vision, you're going to see a different version of him. One shaped by adversity, not broken by it. And as for Cleveland, well, they're going to have to live with what they did. Or more accurately, what they didn't do. The real plot twist? They might have just lit a fire under the very quarterback they could have built around. A fire that's going to follow them every single season. Until then, we wait, we watch, and we keep the popcorn ready. Because in this league, nothing stays buried for long. And when the receipts start to surface, the only question left will be, why didn't you believe in him when it mattered? Comment below, which team should pick up Shedeur and give him the arc he deserves? Who do you blame for this mess? Coaches, management, or all the above? And if you want more drama served fresh every week, don't forget to subscribe. Because this league may love football, but it lives for chaos.